Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something that feels like, well, more than just one news story. It's almost a paradigm shift in the news itself.
It really is. We're talking about a huge presidential interview that's also a test case for this completely new media landscape that's emerging.
Right. And what we're going to do for you today is try to break this down into two key things. First, we need to look at the actual content of the interview because the claims made were dense and incredibly specific.
And second, we have to zoom out. We need to place this whole event in the context of the new CBS Evening News. Who's in charge now? What is their philosophy? And how is it all being received?
So the source material we're working from are excerpts from President Trump's interview on January 13th.
With the new anchor, Tony Dokoupil. And just the logistics of it, tell a huge story. This one interview took up nearly 14 minutes of the broadcast.
14 minutes?
Yeah, aired with no commercial breaks and apparently almost no edits. I mean, think about that for a second. In modern evening news, that kind of time for one person uninterrupted it's just unprecedented.
It's a massive, dramatic statement right out of the gate. And to understand why they do that, we have to look at who is now running the show. Because this wasn't just, a new anchor. This was a total regime change at CBS News.
Absolutely. The central figure is Bori Weiss. She was named editor-in-chief after her company, the Free Press, was bought by Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison back in October.
And so she brings in Dokoupil, who people might know from the morning show, to be the face of this new evening news.
And they came in with a very, very explicit philosophy. They basically said, people don't trust the media anymore. Dokoupil himself repeated that, saying people do not trust us like they used to.
And they didn't just diagnose the problem, they named a cause. They said mainstream news put too much weight in the analysis of academics or elites and not enough on you.
It's a direct appeal, isn't it? It's speaking to that feeling that a lot of people have that they're being talked down to by the media.
It's a populist, anti-elite stance, for sure. They even put out these principles, including the line, and this is a direct quote, "We love America, and we make no apologies for saying so."
Wow. So they're planting a flag.
Oh, a huge flag, and they moved fast. Dokoupil actually started 2 days early, on January 3rd, and his first big get
The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth.
right after the invasion of Venezuela to get Nicolas Maduro. So a 3-part interview on a huge controversial foreign policy move. That was their opening shot.
Which brings us to this Trump interview. And it's also about the setting, right? They didn't do this in a studio.
No, this was at a Ford Motor Company factory in Dearborn, Michigan, part of his whole Live from America tour. Again, everything is about reinforcing that connection to, the real America.
Okay, so that's the setup. New leadership, new philosophy, and this unprecedented 14-minute block of airtime. We have to look at what was actually said in those 14 minutes.
Let's do it. Okay, so unpacking the content, it really broke down into 4 major topics, and some of the claims were, well, they were explosive.
The first theme was the economy. Trump's core message was, we have the strongest economy maybe in the history of the country. He said the U.S. was dead a year and a half ago.
And now?
We now have the hottest country in the world. And he directly linked that, to foreign policy. He brought up the big victory with Venezuela right in that same breath.
So the classic argument, strength abroad means prosperity at home. That's a familiar rhetorical frame.
Exactly. But then the interview took a turn that really sent shockwaves through institutional Washington. It went after the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell.
And you have to remember, Powell is already under a microscope. There's a Justice Department investigation going on.
Right. Not about interest rates or policy, but about whether he lied to Congress about the massive renovation of the Fed's headquarters. So there's already this cloud of suspicion.
A cloud of, mismanagement or something worse.
Precisely. So Trump jumps on that. He calls Powell a lousy Fed chairman, criticizes him on interest rates being too high, but then he goes right for the construction project.
Yeah, what did he say specifically?
He alleged billions, with a B, billions of dollars in overruns, and then he just delivered the final verdict.
Which was?
Powell is either corrupt or incompetent.
Wow. Just laying that out there. Corrupt or incompetent. For 13 minutes with no immediate fact check, that's a direct assault on a supposedly independent institution.
It's a perfect example of their less analysis, philosophy, in action.
Yes.
Here's the information straight from the source. You decide.
But Dokoupil did push back on another topic, and it was a really interesting moment. It was about the limits of presidential power.
Yeah, this was fascinating. Dokoupil brought up an old quote from Trump, I think it was from the New York Times, where he'd said that only his own morality limited his power internationally.
And he asked him if that still applied.
He did. And Trump doubled down. He said, yes, his own morality is the limit, claiming, I have a very high grade of morality.
Okay, but then came the follow-up.
This was the key exchange. Dokoupil said, not the Constitution, not the courts. That's what I thought you were going to say.
A direct challenge.
A very direct challenge.
Yeah.
And Trump's response was almost casual. He said, well, the Constitution and courts, of course, that goes without saying.
That goes without saying, but he didn't say it until he was prompted.
Exactly. The sequence there is everything. Morality comes first as the primary limit. The Constitution is an afterthought, something that, goes without saying. It tells you a lot about a governing philosophy.
It really does. Okay, and the final topic was maybe the most volatile, the killing of Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis by an ICE agent.
The hugely charged incident. Massive protests.
And Trump's comments on it were immediately all over the news. He said her actions were pretty tough, but then he said something about the evidence.
He introduced this idea of doubt. He claimed the videos can be viewed two ways. And then he got even more specific.
What did he add?
He said, there are a couple versions of that tape that are very, very bad.
A couple versions of the tape. So he's suggesting there's evidence out there that tells a different story. He's creating a counter narrative.
He is. He's effectively using the same playbook as the new CBS News question, the official, elite version of events. But applying it to a federal killing, it's a very powerful move.
So you take those four things, the economy, the attack on the Fed, the Constitution, the ICE incident, all in one unedited block. It forces you to ask, what is the new CBS doing here? How does this fit their strategy?
And the answer seems to be all about tone. Critics have all pointed out this new, less antagonistic stance toward the Trump administration. It's a deliberate choice.
An attempt to win back viewers who got tired of what they saw as, a constant fight.
And you see it in other reports, too, not just this interview, like Dokoupil's report from Miami on Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Oh, I saw that. He got teary-eyed.
He did. He called him the ultimate Florida man and said, whatever you think of his politics, you've got to admit it's an impressive resume. It's about finding the human story over the political one.
Or in Minneapolis, after the Good killing, he didn't just focus on the controversy.
No, he framed it as a national dilemma. He called both pro- and anti-ICE beliefs deeply American sentiments. And he pleaded for viewers to, find a way to live with people who are genuinely different from us.
So the goal is unity. Elevate American identity over political division.
That seems to be the mission. But, and this is a really important detail, the broadcast didn't just let Trump's claims stand alone.
Right. What happened in the second half of the show?
Immediately after that huge Trump segment, they had an interview with the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra.
And she talked about tariffs.
She did. And she directly contradicted Trump's hottest economy claim. She said, flat out, that his tariffs cost GM a few $1 billion in 2025.
So there's the check and balance. But it's not an analyst telling you that. It's another powerful figure, another elite, if you will, presenting conflicting information.
And they just put them back to back and leave it to the viewer to figure it out.
So how did people react to this new style?
Well, the reaction was not subtle. The most public takedown came, ironically, on CBS itself during the Golden Globes.
Right, the host, Nikki Glaser.
She had that amazing line. She said, the award for most editing goes to CBS News, and then called it America's newest place to see BS News.
Oof. On your own network, that's rough.
It's very rough. And it points to the tension. But there's also hard data.
The viewership number.
From January 5th to the 9th, the overall viewership for the CBS Evening News was down 23% from the same time last year.
23%? That's a collapse.
It's a massive drop. It suggests this big play to win back a lost audience might actually be alienating the audience they already had.
So where does this all leave us? What does it all mean for you, the person listening to this?
I think you can boil it down to three things. First, you have this radical experiment in giving a president unedited, unfiltered airtime to make some really damaging claims.
Second, you have the philosophy behind it. This explicit mission to push back against elite analysis and speak directly to you.
And third, you have this collision between that philosophy and reality, a 23% ratings drop, and very public, very harsh criticism.
Which leaves us with a really fundamental question about what we want from the news. CBS said they want to place less weight on elites and more on you.
But look at how that played out. They gave you 14 minutes of the president saying the economy is the best ever.
And then they immediately followed it with the CEO, an elite by any definition, saying his policies cost her company billions of dollars.
So how are you, the viewer, supposed to sort that out? Is it actually better to get less analysis from journalists? Or does that just shift the entire burden onto you to do the research to figure out who's telling the truth?
It's a huge challenge, and this new approach at CBS is basically forcing every viewer to become their own editor. That's the deep dive for today. Thanks for listening.